raw fiction.
The champagne in my glass was warm, but I didn't care. I stood on the periphery of the ballroom, the parquet floor beneath my feet, feeling solid, dependable. It should have. I had spent the last 6 months supervising the reinforcement of the joists underneath it. This was the Blackwood Manor Centennial Gala. For 3 years, I had been the silent engine behind the Vane Holloway family's resurrection. I was the husband of Julianne, the sole heiress, but to her mother, Catherine, I was the useful provincial. I was the architect who knew how to stretch a dollar and how to plead with contractors to work on credit. I watched Julianne across the room. She was radiant, wearing a dress that cost more than my father made in a year. She was laughing with the board of trustees. The estate was saved. The historical status was granted. The trust funds were unlocked. I took a sip of the tepid champagne and smiled. We had done it. The sleepless nights, the sawdust in my lungs, the constant negotiation with creditors, it was over. We were safe. I adjusted my tie, feeling the familiar weight of the antique brass compass in my pocket, a gift she had given me on our first anniversary. To help you find your way home. To me, the inscription read. I thought I was the captain of the ship. I didn't realize I was just the caulking in the hull. Julianne caught my eye. She didn't smile. She offered a small, stiff nod and motioned toward the library, the only room in the house I hadn't been allowed to renovate. It remained dark, smelling of tobacco and secrets. I met her there. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, muffling the music of the string quartet. They loved the speech, I said, stepping toward her. Your mother actually looked pleased. I think we finally turned the corner, Jules. Julianne stood by the fireplace, her back to the flames. She looked like a porcelain doll, exquisite, fragile, and completely cold. Mother and I have been talking, she said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. It lacked the frantic tremor it usually had when she spoke about the estate's finances. That's good, I said, confused by the stillness in the room. And? The restoration is complete, Elias. The auditors have signed off on the solvency report. I know. We celebrated that this morning. The thing is, she continued, smoothing the silk of her skirt, the family is entering a new chapter. We need to re-establish our alliances. The trustees, they feel that our image needs to be impeccable. I frowned. Our image is fine. We saved the house. You saved the house, she corrected. But you don't belong in it. The silence that followed was heavy, physical. It pressed against my eardrums. I don't understand, I said. Mother has arranged a merger of sorts. With the Prescott family. It's a consolidation of assets. It secures the future. She looked at me then, really looked at me, with eyes that were terrifyingly vacant. I can't do that with you, Elias. You're wonderfully talented with your hands, but you're not one of us. You never were. I laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. Is this a joke? Jules, I laid the plumbing in the East Wing with my own hands because we couldn't afford a plumber. I managed your mother's portfolio when she nearly gambled it away. And we are grateful, she said. The word grateful sounded like she was tipping a bellboy. But the crisis is over. I need a partner who understands the world I'm returning to. Someone with lineage. You're leaving me, I stated. It wasn't a question. I'm aligning myself with my future, she said. Please, Elias, don't make a scene. Mother has prepared a settlement. It's generous, considering you brought no capital into the marriage. A settlement. The word hung in the air like smoke. I looked at her, searching for the woman who had cried in my arms 3 months ago, terrified that the bank would foreclose. I looked for the woman who swore that titles didn't matter, that we were the fortress. She wasn't there. Perhaps she never had been. I realized then that the Julianne I loved was a projection. I had projected depth onto a shallow pool. I had mistaken her helplessness for gentleness. I had mistaken her need for love. I don't want the settlement, I said. My voice was quiet. Don't be difficult, she sighed. checking the grandfather clock in the corner. The Prescotts are arriving in 20 minutes. I need you to be gone by then. Gone. Just like the scaffolding once the facade is painted. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass compass. I looked at it. It was heavy, solid, real. You're right, I said. She blinked, surprised by my sudden agreement. I am? Yes. I don't belong here. I placed the compass on the mahogany table. It made a dull thud. Good luck with the damp in the cellar, Julianne. The sump pump needs to be reset every time it rains. But I suppose a Prescott won't know how to do that. I turned and walked out. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't scream. I walked past the ballroom, past the guests drinking the wine I had selected, and out the front doors. The night air was freezing, but for the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. The weeks that followed were a blur of gray ceilings and instant coffee. I rented a studio apartment in the industrial district, a converted warehouse that smelled of diesel and ozone. It was a single room with a mattress on the floor and a window that rattled when the trains went by. It was a stark contrast to the velvet-draped silence of Blackwood Manor, but it possessed one quality the manor lacked. It was mine. The first few days, I waited for the phone to ring. It was a reflex, a phantom limb sensation. I expected Julianne to call, panic in her voice, asking how to handle the staff or where the tax documents were filed. The phone remained silent. I sat on the mattress, staring at a water stain on the ceiling. My mind began to replay the last 3 years, but this time, the lighting was different. I remembered the nights I stayed up drafting blueprints for the conservatory while Julianne slept. At the time, I told myself, I am supporting her vision. Now, I saw it clearly. I was doing her homework. I remembered the way she would shrink when her mother entered the room, pushing me forward to take the insults. At the time, I thought, I am her shield. Now I saw the truth. I was her meat shield. She hadn't been a partner. She had been a parasite. A beautiful, tragic parasite that had fed on my competence until she was strong enough to detach and find a bigger host. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't heartbreak. It was humiliation. I had prided myself on being a builder, a man who saw structure and stability. Yet I had built a castle on quicksand for a woman who despised the very dirt on my boots. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I lay in the dark, wrestling with the urge to drive back to the manor, to bang on the gates, to present an itemized list of every drop of sweat I had poured into her inheritance. You owe me. I wanted to scream. I made you. But then, a thought stopped me. A cold, hard realization that sat in my gut like a stone. She didn't care. If I showed up screaming, she would just see a hysterical tradesman. She would look at me with that pitying, detached gaze, and she would feel validated. See, she would think, Mother was right. He is unstable. He is low class. I could not give her that satisfaction. I stood up. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. The face in the mirror looked gaunt, the eyes hollow. No more, I whispered to the empty room. I went to the corner where I had dumped my tools, the only things I had taken from the trunk of my car. I picked up my drafting pencil. It felt familiar, heavy, honest. I taped a fresh sheet of paper to the peeling laminate of the kitchen table. I didn't draw a manor. I didn't draw a restoration. I drew a line. A sharp, clean, modern line. Recovery was not a montage. It was a grind. I took a job as a foreman for a commercial construction crew. It was beneath my skill level, but I needed the money. And I needed the exhaustion. I needed to be so tired at the end of the day that I couldn't dream. Marco, the site manager, was a man carved out of granite and cigarette smoke. He didn't know who I was, or who I had been married to. To him, I was just Thorne, the guy who could read a blueprint better than the architects who drew them. 3 months in, we were on a break, sitting on a stack of drywall, eating sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. You work like you're trying to outrun a fire, Thorne. Marco grunted, chewing slowly. Just doing the job, Marco. Bullshit. You check the measurements 3 times. You stay late to clean the site. You fix mistakes the other guys make before I even see them." He eyed me suspiciously. "What are you proving?" "That I'm competent," I said. Marco laughed, a gravelly sound. "Kid, you're the best builder on this site. The only person who doesn't know that is you. You act like you're waiting for permission to be good." His words hit me harder than he intended. Waiting for permission. That was it. For 3 years, I had waited for the Vane Holloway seal of approval. I had waited for Catherine to nod, for Julianne to smile. I had outsourced my self-worth to people who had never worked a day in their lives. I finished my sandwich. I crumpled the wrapper. "You're right," I said. That afternoon, I quit, not in anger, in clarity. I had saved enough for a deposit on a small office space, a real studio. I reached out to a contact from my university days, a developer who had always liked my style, but whom I had ignored because Julianne thought his projects were too brutalist. "Elias," he said over the phone, "I heard you were locked away in some country estate playing Lord of the Manor. You back in the game?" "I am," I said. "And I have ideas." The first commission was small, a sustainable, glass-walled library for a community college. I poured myself into it, but this time, I wasn't restoring dead wood. I was using steel, glass, and light. I was building for the future, not preserving the past. The work was purifying. When I drew a wall, it stayed where I put it. When I calculated a load, the physics didn't lie to me. One Tuesday morning, about 8 months after the gala, I sat in my new office. The sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I had a cup of coffee in my hand. I took a sip. It was hot. I paused. I realized that for the entirety of my marriage, I had never finished a cup of coffee while it was hot. There was always a crisis, a leak, a panic attack, a summons from Catherine. I sat there, in the quiet sunshine, and drank the whole cup. It was the best coffee I had ever tasted. I didn't look for news of them, but in a city like ours, the elite are the weather unavoidable. I saw Julianne on the cover of a local society magazine at the newsstand. She was standing next to distinctively jawed Harrison Prescott. The headline read, "A Merger of Dynasties, the Wedding of the Decade." She looked beautiful, but I knew the look in her eyes. It was the same look she had when she told me about the settlement. It was the look of a deer that thinks if it stands perfectly still, the predator won't see it. I bought a pack of gum and left the magazine in the rack. A few weeks later, the rumors started to trickle down through the contractors. "You hear about the Blackwood job?" Marco asked me one day. We had stayed in touch. I often hired his crew for my own projects now. "No," I said, looking over the plans for a new art gallery. Disaster. The roof started leaking again. Turns out the new guys they hired to maintain it cut corners. And the family? They're bleeding cash. Apparently, the Prescott merger is on the rocks. "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "The Prescott kid is a gambler. High stakes. He's draining the Vane Holloway accounts faster than they can fill them. And the mother, the old dragon, she's sick. Can't manage the books anymore." I felt a strange sensation in my chest. I waited for the pity. I waited for the urge to rush in and save them. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a calm detachment, like hearing about a car crash on a road I no longer traveled. "That's unfortunate," I said. "Unfortunate?" Marco laughed. "It's justice, boss." "No," I said, rolling up the blueprints. "It's just gravity. Things fall down if you don't build them right." The invitation came a year and a half after I left. The City Architecture and Design Awards. I was nominated for the Visionary of the Year for the Glass Library. It was a black tie event, the kind Julianne lived for. I almost didn't go, but then I looked at my reflection in the mirror of my downtown loft. I wasn't the gaunt man in the warehouse anymore. My shoulders were broader, my hands were rougher, but my eyes were clear. I put on my tuxedo. It was one I had bought myself, tailored to fit me, not one of Julianne's father's cast-offs. The venue was a cavernous museum hall, lit by architectural uplighting. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. I was speaking with a potential client when the room seemed to shift. The ambient noise dropped a decibel. I turned. Julianne was walking through the crowd. She was alone. No Harrison Prescott. No Catherine. She looked faded. The dress was vintage, but not in the chic way. It looked tired. Her posture, usually so rigid, was slumped. She was thin, painfully so. She scanned the room, her eyes darting frantically until they landed on me. She froze. I didn't look away. I didn't run. I simply stood there, holding my drink, existing. She began to make her way toward me. The crowd parted for her, not out of respect, but out of awkwardness. They could smell the desperation on her. "Elias," she said when she reached me. "Julianne." She reached out as if to touch my arm, then pulled back. "You look different." "I am different." She let out a breathy, nervous laugh. "I saw the library. It's magnificent. I always knew you were a genius." "You told me I was a useful provincial," I said. My tone wasn't accusatory. It was just factual. She flinched. "I was under so much pressure, Elias. You know how Mother is. You know what I was up against." "I do." "It's been difficult," she whispered, stepping closer, trying to recreate the intimacy we once shared. "Harrison, he wasn't like you. He didn't understand. He left us, Elias. He took so much. The manor. It's falling apart. The West Wing is unsafe again." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "I miss you. I miss us. I walk through those empty halls and I see your work everywhere. You're the only one who ever made me feel safe." There it was. The hook. The plea. She wanted the buffer back. She wanted the mechanic to come fix the engine she had neglected. "I need you," she said, her voice trembling. "Come home, Elias. We can fix it. Mother is too sick to stop us now. It can be ours." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had discarded me like a broken tool the moment she thought she had a better offer. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt bored. The tragedy of Julianne wasn't that she was evil. It was that she was empty. She was a container waiting to be filled by someone else's strength. "I can't help you, Julianne," I said. "What do you mean? You love the manor. You put your soul into it." "I put my labor into it," I corrected. "My soul is right here. But what about us?" I checked my watch. It was a sleek, modern chronograph. I had thrown the brass compass into the river months ago. "There is no us," I said gently. "There never was. There was just you, and the person you needed to carry your baggage." "Elias, please, I have no one." "That," I said, "is a structural problem. You should probably hire a professional." "Elias," she hissed, her mask slipping, the entitlement bleeding through. "You can't just walk away from me. I made you who you are." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, reaching my eyes. "No, Jules. You broke me. I rebuilt myself." "And the renovations?" I gestured to the room, to the award waiting for me on the stage, to the life I had carved out of the bedrock. "They're much more stable this time." "I'm sorry," I added, stepping back. "I have to go. My life is waiting for me." I turned my back on her. I walked toward the stage, toward the light, toward the future. Behind me, I heard her call my name once, a sharp, desperate sound. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. The heavy oak doors of my past were closed, and for the first time, I held the key.
Our journey ends now. If you're still here, a subscribe goes a long way for us. I've picked 2 more videos you'll love. Click over and dive in. I'll catch you in the next story. Bye for now.